afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Student Safety Door-to-Door, Part 2. More than 20 million youngsters each day begins and ends with a trip on a bus. In addition, 10% of all K through 8th graders walk or bicycle to school. Other students are driven to and from school. The greatest risks to students occur not only while riding the bus, but also while walking to and from school and walking to and from the school bus or auto drop-off. The purpose of this program is to provide an overview of student safety during the trip to and from school. Specifically, during this program, our presenter will discuss creating a safe student travel environment. The key topics to be covered include student safety management, federal safety standards, driver selection and training, driver conditions, safe school premises, supervision, new technologies for safe travel, and finally, accident investigation techniques. The presenter for today's program is Dr. Carl Berkowitz. Dr. Berkowitz has 50 years of transportation and traffic engineering experience. He has served as a litigation consultant and held various positions in industry, government, and higher education. Dr. Berkowitz has extensive experience in planning, design, safety, security, construction, maintenance, operations, and management. He holds a bachelor's in civil engineering and an MBA in industrial management from the City College of New York, and a master's in transportation planning and a PhD in transportation planning and engineering from NYU Poly. In addition to his work involving pedestrians and virtually every form of transportation and its safety, including aviation and maritime, Dr. Berkowitz has written numerous reports and articles for major publications, chaired task forces, appeared on national television, newspapers, and radio, and made numerous scholarly presentations worldwide. He holds memberships in many transportation and engineering standards professional associations. Dr. Berkowitz's areas of expertise include pedestrian and passenger accidents, passenger terminal and station accidents, school bus and transit bus accidents, subway and passenger rail accidents, passenger on track accidents, bicycle and motorcycle accidents, passenger collisions, and finally, slip, trip, and fall accidents. We'll take questions throughout today's program. If you have a question, please use the chat or Q&A feature found on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll get your question answered as quickly as we can. We encourage all attendees to submit questions throughout today's program. Tomorrow morning, I'll send out an email with a link to the archived recording of this program, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was used during today's program. We do ask that you take time to fill out the survey that will appear on your screen after today's webinar is over. I now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our distinguished guest, Dr. Carl Berkowitz. Carl, the program is all yours.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let's get right into the program. As Matt mentioned earlier, these are the topics that we're going to be covering today. And this is a follow-up to a Part 1 seminar. And if you're interested in, and you missed the Part 1 seminar of this series, you can get that. Matt, I think, is going to send out the link to Part 1 as well as the information for Part 2.
That's correct, Carl. Tomorrow morning, I'll send out an email with a link to the archive recording of Parts 1 and 2.
Thank you. Okay, today we're going to talk about our most precious cargo, the physical safety of students, and the area that we're going to be covering, in addition to what was covered in Part 1, is access, walking, bicycling, bus stop, boarding bus, bus riding, alighting, and the school premises. There'll be some slight overlap, but most of the material to be presented today is different from what was presented in Part 1. In terms of school access, as we know, if any of us have brought our children to school, we know that there's around the school, whether it's in an urban area, a suburban area, a rural area, significant traffic around the school, both children walking, bicycling, and parents and buses dropping off and picking up. And our challenge, and what we're going to try to focus on today, is how do we get the student from home to school safe and sound. Obviously, the student that is traveling to school and returning from school has many areas of vulnerability. And my goal as a safety engineer is how do we eliminate these threats to our student safety, and if there is a threat to student safety, how do we mitigate, and if we can't mitigate, how do we reduce the impact of that incident or potential incident. When we talk about school safety, we have a number of clients that we're dealing with. We have the bus drivers, the students, the visitors, which are the parents or other guests, and all the employees of the school district. Let's talk about the school bus driver, which in terms of safety and security of our children plays perhaps the biggest role. And in terms of the number of school bus drivers out there in our U.S. universe, not counting Canada, just in the U.S., there are somewhere between 450 and 480,000 bus drivers at this current time. And that's a lot of bus drivers to teach, train, manage, and ensure that they take good care of our precious cargo. The bus driver plays a very significant role in terms of safety, and it's important that our driver has a focus, that he pays constant attention to where he's going and what he's doing, that he observes the right-of-way, and that unlike others out in the system, they have to be particularly cautious for unexpected events, and that an unexpected event it becomes an event that's not unexpected. The driver we have to be sure that the driver operates in a predictable and lawful manner, and that we have to bear in mind that the bus drivers have a strange day. They work early in the morning. Some of them work part-time and they're off during the day. Others may work on other bus duties for the bus company and work a full day. And the bus driver that works in the morning comes back in the afternoon. So even though the number of hours they spend on the bus may be short, it's a long, busy day and a very difficult work day. And that it's important that we keep them focused and that we ensure that the driver expertise is always up to what is required for the job. One of the things of general concern, and to always bear in mind, and we don't generally take this into consideration, but we must, and that's the perception reaction time. How fast does it take for a bus driver to react or respond to a particular situation? And when we interview bus drivers after accidents or incidents, they say, well, we applied the brakes or we made a maneuver the instant that we saw that there was danger. And we know that's impossible because before one can make any kind of decision, there's a perception time before one can make a reaction. And this perception time could be anywhere from 3/4 of a second to 4 seconds. So there's a time lag between seeing something, understanding that something, and taking action. Just in a typical situation, and we look at driver perception reaction, he sees a student, but maybe he doesn't see the student, and it takes, you may perceive something, but you need also to first detect it, then perceive it, and then understand what you're seeing, and then take some kind of action and complete that action. And this all takes time. And this time we refer to as the perception reaction time. And just to put it in perspective, let's say a bus driver, in order to apply the brakes, has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second, which is an outstanding reaction time, which might be on the high side, or in terms of time, the low side of a typical bus driver. And you can see the impact that reaction time has in terms of responding and braking. The various studies that have been conducted by AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers gives a range for this information, and they say that perception reaction times can range from 1 to 4 seconds for the driver, and in terms of the pedestrian that's out there or the student that's walking, that can range from 3 to 4 seconds. Most accidents that occur are human error and not necessarily mechanical. And in terms of human error, in terms of drivers, these are the various categories that have been compiled by human factors engineers and human factor psychologists in terms of the types of errors that drivers have been identified as being involved with that result in an accident, such as attention, perception, knowledge, violating the rules, procedural errors, an unattended action, a lapse, a mistake, and just plain old driver fatigue. Working 5 days, odd hours, and it's Friday evening, and you can't wait to get home to the family. It's always essential, and for more than almost any other profession, although this applies to most professions, but especially for bus drivers, they have to have their attention and their focus on spot all the time. And not only are they focused on driving, but they have to be focused on many, many other tasks, children in their environment, what's happening out in their environment, the various areas they go through, children darting out, all sorts of things. They must always have their attention applied. And it has to be under control. And this is descriptive, that how important having attention under control, because if you fail in terms of attention, there is always the potential of a degradation of your performance, and that antecedent can increase reaction time and interfere with cognitive and limit one's ability to respond to an emergency or to any ordinary situation. So it's important that in the training of drivers that they learn to allocate their attention resource and be able to deal with a myriad of different activities that take place in the school bus environment. If it wasn't enough just to drive a bus, the bus driver also has to be concerned with student behavior. He has a large bus load of students, and with children, anything can happen, and student behavior is not that easy to control. And then we have the electronic equipment, and there's always the potential of some kind of medical situation on top of everything else that will affect the driver's ability to focus his attention and also to avoid distraction. The major human factor issues are, of course, fatigue, inattention, lack of training, and the human errors that we discussed earlier. And the goal of in safety is to minimize these errors. And here are some of the types of errors and description of them, and these are the types of errors we must try to control and try to see that they don't enter our safety system, such as perception, lack of skills, there is no excuse for sending a driver out with lack of skills, the manner in which the driver executes, and of course, no driver should be under any kind of impairment, whether it's alcohol, fatigue, drugs, illness, emotional distress, etc. One way to ensure that we have the best of the best driving our important cargo is that we have to be very careful in driver selection. This is a two-part, first part of a two-part list of the types of categories and description of those categories which are absolutely essential in driver selection. There is always a shortage in most areas for drivers because you're looking for somebody that has the ability to work in the morning and then work in the afternoon. A lot of times these people are retired people or people who are working in a part-time job or stay-home moms or stay-home fathers who also want to pick up additional money by doing this type of activity. So driver selection is really, really important and must be given extra attention. This is one half and this is the other half. I've entered it also, since we have friends from Canada that listen to our presentations. Of course, speaking and reading English is important. In some communities, Spanish might not be so bad, or Chinese. And of course, in French Canada, knowledge of French would be highly desirable. And some of the other things that we need to check on is their license. Do they have the proper license? Background checks to try to eliminate those who are inappropriate to be drivers in the first place. And also interviewing and testing and evaluation during their probation period to be assured that they're doing the right job as driver. New York State has gone a step further under Governor Cuomo, and they're trying to eliminate those people that would be inappropriate to be drivers who may slip through the cracks but have been accused or have been convicted of various types of felonies and misdemeanors that are inappropriate for a person that's driving a bus and our precious cargo. Once we've selected the driver, it's important to also train the driver. This is very important, and it cannot be understated how important it is to train a driver and the various performance items that should be included in that training, as well as the safety training that should go into the driver training. If we wanted to break down the important aspects of the driver training and the output of that training, the things that we want to look at is, do they have offensive driver training? Are they aware of the policies of the company and of the school district in terms of student safety? Are they able to control the students on their bus? Do they have a rapport with the students so that they can do that control? Do they understand the loading and unloading and the dangers and vicissitudes that are associated with loading and unloading students? Can they control their attention, awareness? Do they know how to use interior mirrors and exterior mirrors? Do they check the bus out for safety before they use the bus? That's through the pre-trip inspection. And do they know how to deal with emergency situations? And below this diagram are some additional things that we want to see that our drivers are trained in. One thing that's not mentioned here, and comes to my attention from time to time, is why don't drivers get EMT training and first aid training? That's an interesting question, and maybe should be added to just the emergency situations of first aid.
Excuse me, Carl, just very briefly, we had a question that just came in about this. Do bus aides have to have the same level of training, or is there separate training coursework that they're required to do?
Well, in several states, they have training for matrons, or what you call bus aides. They go through a regular separate training program, which is equally as vigorous as the training for the bus driver. In New York State, there's mandated training for school bus matrons. And this has become even more heightened when there's been several incidents where infants were left on buses overnight or left in the yard and did spend the night on the bus, but were left on the bus. So it's important to have the attendant, the aide, as trained as possible in the same areas and more than the bus driver.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carl. I don't see any other questions, so why don't we continue on with the presentation?
Right, the drivers have concerns too. There was a survey conducted of school bus drivers, and these are the top. There were many more issues, but these are the top issues that drivers express concern about. And this goes from the buses being passed by vehicles and how those buses are passed, how other drivers treat the bus drivers, the student behavior, road hazards, fatigue, too long a route, the security, dealing with railroad crossings, loading and unloading, things such as high-speed roads and bus overcrowding and evacuating children in an emergency, whether a fire or an accident or what have you, and those late-night trips that bus drivers have to do from time to time when there's extracurricular activities involved at the school. So the bus drivers are concerned with this. Now, this is a very interesting area. When you ride in a car to school, you have to be buckled in, and it's the law. But when you ride on a school bus, the concept there is that the seat is padded and designed so that the student does not need to have a seat belt while riding the school bus, that they're in a compartmentalized area and that they're absolutely safe. I disagree with this, especially when you have experiences where buses have flipped over or had accidents, and I'll show you some pictures of that, and students get tossed and turned around, and this is a large controversy area, and it only has been resolved in several states which have instituted seatbelt laws, which each state is allowed to do, even though the federal government doesn't. But if you look at the American Academy of Pediatrics, they advocate 3-point seatbelts, such as the picture on the side, and they are particularly concerned that the students get seatbelted as well as having those cushioned seats. This whole issue of compartmentalization is a serious concern amongst many people in the United States, and right now the only buses that are required to have seatbelts are those that are the small buses, which are under 10,000 pounds. And the bus is intended to absorb the energy through the seat, and I myself question if this is sufficient. The National Highway Transportation Safety Board feels that it's sufficient. They feel that there's sufficient crash protection. I don't know. I wouldn't like to see my child being whiplashed to the front of the seat in front of them as part of an accident, a front end or a rear end collision. And what happens when there's a side collision? And one of the things that is brought to everyone's attention is that you want to set standards for children that they will carry on into future life. If a child doesn't have to wear a seatbelt when they're young, they're not likely to want to wear a seatbelt when they get older. So you want to carry this concept of seatbelts from child to young adult to adult to vehicle driver. And I think it's unfortunate that we're not providing that transition. Small children, of course, are seatbelted, and it depends on each individual school. Some states require, some states don't require. I can't see putting a young child on a bus without a lap belt. These are the states currently that require seatbelts. As you can see, it's only a small portion. There's only 5 states that are currently providing and requiring seatbelts. This may grow. There are a lot that are taking it under consideration at this time. The seatbelt controversy goes this way, that children with or without seatbelt, if they were wearing a seatbelt, they would probably be injured more, or if they're not wearing a seatbelt, they wouldn't be injured anymore. I mean, it's like circular logic. If you wear it, you're not going to be injured. If you don't wear it, you're not going to be injured. If you wear it, you are going to be injured. If you don't, it's just, I think it's silliness. The pro seatbelt, this is where I fall in. I feel that the compartmentalization is not sufficient, that seatbelts are essential to reduce injuries and even eliminate, and reduce medical treatment improve discipline and behavior. And the carryover value is really important. If they learn that seatbelts are important when they're young, how are they going to know that seatbelts are now important when they're old, or when they don't go on the bus one day and they go with their parents or a neighbor or a carpool and they don't want to use the seatbelt. And again, the anti-seatbelt lobby keeps saying that compartmentalization is the safest way to go, and lap belts will increase head injuries, neck and abdominal injuries, and that it will affect the integrity of the bus. And if there's a rollover and a fire, the kids will have difficulty getting out. It reduces seatbelt capacity. Well, you can form your own conclusion. Here's some pictures to help you form your own conclusion. This is a compartmentalization and a rear-end collision, and you can see what happens to the children. This is a rollover, and here again on the bottom you can see what happens to the children. They roll over the roof, and there can be severe injuries as a result. This is most of these tests were done in Europe. Volvo has done extensive tests. Volvo even put seatbelts in their intercity and commuter buses, and even in their city buses in some places. Volvo is a strong believer of seatbelts, and they've done testing. And one can't deny Volvo is probably one of the safest cars on the road. Although Volvo bus is no longer part of Volvo car, I think the same philosophies have from the car have transferred over to their bus. And you can see what happens with these dummies when there's a side impact. No compartmentalization is going to help a child on a side impact. And this is what happens when there's shoulder harnesses applied, and you can see that the children are safe and secure. And these are some of the tests, one of the tests that were conducted. And you can see with the impact that a collision has on a bus, especially when it's a tractor trailer that is the party in the accident. Setting the seat belts aside, the National Highway Transit Safety Administration has passed various regulations to make buses much safer in terms of exits and windows and rollover protection and joints and seats and crash protection and fuel safety integrity. Every time I always think of the Pinto and the experiences when every time the Pinto had a rear-end collision, there would be these gas fires. So this fuel spills, and the containment of fuel is one of the things that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has inputted into their Federal Motor Vehicle Safety standards. The National Academy of Science sides with the government in terms of the way the bus is designed, and that the lap belts are not essential to the safety of children. The one exception to that is standard number 222, which requires seat belts on small vehicles with less than 10,000 pounds, which are like the minibuses, those type of buses. There is a move on. Initially, when they did the compartmentalization, the height of the compartmentalized seat was 20 inches, and now the standard 222 has raised that to 24 inches. My thought is that each state should enact legislation that provides for uniform procedures regarding school bus stopping on highways, loading and discharging, information transfer, things of that nature, and the National Highway Transportation Standards Association, Pupil Transportation Safety Guide 17, deals with a lot of this. So you can go to the website of NHTSA and get Guide 17 if you're so inclined. There are a lot of equipment and technical issues, and these were identified by the bus drivers. They are concerned about storage space for themselves and storage space for students on the buses. Special consideration for special needs students, that not enough is being done, not enough on some of the buses, not enough restraints for the wheelchairs, that the mirrors could be better. There are some blind spots that need to be taken into consideration, and the arms and the heads of children out the window, we have to find ways to take that under control, and better restraints for special needs students on buses, since most buses don't have seatbelts. The school district also has a major role in the safety scenario, and that includes developing policies and guidelines concerning all aspects of the school bus operation, to document these policies, and also to deal with what items children can bring on the bus and what items children cannot bring on the bus, and procedures as to what skills and trainings, and it should be uniform, and to ensure that the maximum is done to ensure the proper training of not only bus drivers but also transportation personnel and all employees working in the school district. They all should be buying into the safety program. The state's role is to ensure uniformity from school district to school district, and by enacting legislation, and to control all aspects, including the hours that a bus driver can operate a bus and other things of that nature. This is controlled for truck drivers and other professional drivers and commercial drivers, and needs to also be controlled for school bus drivers as well. It's not just the school district and not the state and not just the bus drivers, but also the passengers have an important duties and responsibilities. And this sort of summarizes what are the duties of the students in terms of when they ride the bus. It's not a place for free-for-all. They have standards and guidelines and responsibilities as well. Some of the things that, this is sort of a review of some of the things that need to be taken into consideration in terms of the bus, in terms of emergency exits, and have the baggage clear so that the aisles are clear and the emergency exits remain unobstructed.
Carl, just a question about that slide that came in. How often should school districts and bus operators practice their emergency procedures on a bus?
A lot of them do it just at the beginning of the term. It should be done on a periodic basis, just like with fire drills in the school. Practice. Even though the rate of injuries and accidents is very low on school buses, it could happen. And, that anomaly, that 100-year storm, we want to make sure if it happens even once, that the children are prepared. And children have short memories, and practice is very, very important. Anything further on that?
No, I don't see any other questions, so why don't we just continue on?
Okay, and also it's important that the equipment be well maintained. And many school districts, in addition to having good maintenance practices and requirements, set the life expectancy of the bus so that the latest and the best equipment is in the buses that they use. At one point in time, many of the buses that were used as school buses in the United States ended up in other markets like Mexico, South America. I'm not exactly sure if that's still happening, but that was where those buses tended to end up, just like trolleys and city buses. But I think everybody is becoming more conscious on safety, and there is no real aftermarket for these buses, other than some people buy them and use them for personal use. This is some of the identification and equipment that's available on each bus. And there is a lot of equipment enhancement that's out there. And these are some of the things that have been introduced over the years to improve the safety and the quality of the buses. And hopefully more of this will take place. One can only hope. Some efforts have been made to increase the conspicuity of the back of the bus, such as warnings on the back of the bus. In the second picture, there's a text on the bumper. And one thing I like, in addition to the stop arm in the front of the bus, this bus has a stop arm in the rear, which is not a requirement, but I think is very valuable because of the number of vehicles that are passing buses and not following the rules and regulations. This I found very interesting. This is an electronic sign in the back of the school bus in Paris, or even when they use commercial buses or city buses, they put up a sign to warn people that children are crossing in front of the bus. There was a horrific accident in Lucas County, and one of the people working as a mechanic there came up with the idea to provide additional lighting systems to make people better aware of children that are crossing the street in front of a bus or crossing the street to board a bus or leave a bus, what have you. And also to make people more cognitive that the bus is stopped and the red light is on and there's caution. And yet with all that, this poor young girl, tragic accident. One of the things that is being adopted and tested out there in the real world, collision avoidance systems. And this is one which we call Advanced Vehicle Warning Systems, or ITS technology, which will let the bus driver know, even in blind spot areas, of a pedestrian crossing ahead, and also to be able to take appropriate actions. In this case, you note that in addition to the seeing through the windshield, this is also amplified on a video screen in the bus compartment.
Excuse me, Carl, going back to a couple slides ago when we talked about the responsibility of the bus driver and the bus aide,
Right.
We have a question here from Kenneth who asks, can you please explain the respective responsibility of a bus aide and driver with regard to control of students on the bus?
Well, it's their responsibility to control. If there's an aide on the bus, then the aide is primarily responsible. But if there is no aide on the bus, it's the bus driver that's responsible. And the bus driver needs to be trained in various techniques to ensure that they understand that it's their responsibility and how to best control the children. You don't want the children going wild, such as sticking their feet out the window, running up and down, hitting each other, things of that nature.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, so why don't we continue on?
One of the things that's being introduced, which has been introduced in other transportation environments, and that's real-time cameras on the buses, where the central control can observe what's going on in the bus. And this is a very good tool when you have a bus where a bus driver is having difficulty with students that are a little bit more difficult than others. This records those incidents and provides feedback to central control and also to the parents of the disruptive children, because now we have a case record of what's taking place on the bus. And what we have with this technology is we have real-time tracking, live observations Central control can listen in to what's happening on the bus, and if they're not happy with what's happening, they can intervene. They can speak to the people on the bus. So that kind of neat stuff. One of the problems that we have is that sometimes children get on the wrong bus, get off at the wrong stop. They go to sleep on the bus, don't get off the bus. Parents are always worried and want to be able to track their children. I did a project in the Middle East, and in the Middle East they adopted these systems early on, mainly for the fact parents were even though it was the biggest problem in the Middle East with school buses was the heavy congestion. Parents were concerned when the child arrived at school, when the child left school, and when the child arrived home to be met, and those kinds of things. Because the trip was so chaotic and unpredictable, because the most extreme traffic you could ever imagine, these types of systems allow you to monitor in real time, all the time, where your child is in the system. One of the big problems we face in the United States, and I see it all the time when I'm driving, and I just find it absolutely incredible, is that with the stop arm up, with the lights flashing, people just illegally driving by and ignoring the bus and the loading or unloading activity, and put a lot of children in jeopardy. And this concept is working very effectively. One such system is called the Guardian system, which automatically photographs and enforces, and it's proved to be a deterrent for people who have a habit of bypassing buses. It was found that nobody does this twice. Once caught, that's it. A second system also takes pictures and has been developed, and this is a stop-arm violation camera, also similar to the system that we, by another manufacturer, similar to the system we showed in the previous slide. Also catches violators, photographs them, and it's been proven to be an excellent deterrent and an important safety feature on buses. This is a system that's used in China, where parents are able to check position and route of the bus, and in order for the bus to operate, the bus driver has to use a fingerprint. I guess eventually they'll go from fingerprint to iris print, but only the bus driver whose fingerprint is recorded can operate the bus. Well, we say, why is that important? There was a situation in New York City where a school bus was taken, or a commercial bus, I forget which it was taken out by a young kid, and he started picking up people, and finally at the end crashed the bus. There are three components to our system management and our safety system, and that is the accident itself, which is a consequence of events which can result in injuries and death and property damage. Small incidents which can cause harm and minor damage. And most important, and sometimes neglected in this whole process of the safety management, is the near miss. There are hundreds and hundreds of near misses which could have resulted in an incident and an accident and need to be monitored. One of the things that is important to be able to pick up on these various safety features and concerns is do a safety audit. And this sort of, it's a continuous process. When the audit is finished, we continue the audit again. This is the various steps, such as measurement, exploring, determining standards, look for opportunities, review, and then do it all over again. You can never do too little. Is that a question, Matt?
We have a couple questions from Kathleen. Would you like to address them now?
Sure.
Sure. Kathleen asks, what is the response, and this goes back to the previous question that we asked, what's the responsibility of the aide regarding training the student not to cross the street until the bus gets to the stop?
Well, the training should be provided by the school district, and what the children should be doing and not be doing. The aide should be familiar with the training, and if the aide, some aides are not permitted to leave the bus, so they really do not have an interaction with the children crossing.
And then a follow-up to that is, what is the responsibility of the aide or driver if students don't comply with the rules that apply prior to being picked up, such as not crossing the street until the bus gets there or is fully stopped?
Well, this is an incident if somebody's hurt, but it's a near incident, right? It comes into my near-miss category. These situations need to be reported immediately to the school district so they can do remediation and try to eliminate bad behavior or find ways to minimize the bad behavior.
And then the final part of the question is, what is the aide's responsibility regarding crossing the children in front of the bus?
Except for when you're dealing with disabled children, in many districts the aide has to stay on the bus and the driver is not permitted to leave the bus as well. In California, they allow the bus driver to get off and to assist the children. So they may also allow the aide as well. But this varies by district by district. It's not uniform.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, Carl, so why don't we continue on?
Okay. Well, what we were basically in the end concerned with is these situations which are potentially dangerous to the student can cause harm, and that's the hazard. And through the audits, we can do a comprehensive review and look at every situation and the safety needs door to door. And we talked about frequency earlier, and you got to do this often because things change, whether it's training or anything. You got to always reinforce, and things can change in a heartbeat. And only by doing frequent tours, in many cases, when I review documents of school districts, I find that they do a review to set up the bus stops, and they never come back and look at what they've done or if what they did was appropriate. But by having a continuous review, you can identify problems before they become problems. And this is basically what we want to do to control hazards. We want to design to eliminate them. We want to minimize risk. We want to use whatever safety devices we can find and employ. We want to use all the warning systems available. We want to have procedures set down for everyone who's in the system, from the employees, the drivers, the students, the parents, the neighborhood. Everybody needs to be trained. Everybody has to be on the same page. And we want to minimize and we want to manage the risk so there's no risk at all. One such approach of hazard analysis was developed by the U.S. Department of Transportation, and this is just a brief summary of the various steps that the U.S. Department of Transportation has identified as collision hazard analysis, but it's for any type of hazard analysis, and this can also be applied to the door-to-door trip for children. And in the end, we want to prevent hazards from occurring in the first place. And that's the first line of defense. Let's get rid of the hazard in the beginning. And of course, when we think of all different kinds of transportation, school bus transportation and school travel door to door is totally different than any other mode of transportation because of the nature of our passengers. They're all young children and even infants in some cases, the large number of passengers on the bus, and the exposure that all these dangers leave out there in the system, which exposes school districts and bus companies to litigation. So it's in everybody's best interest to eliminate hazards in the first place. This is a masked list of the top approximately 30 or so primary causes of school bus accidents. And they're not in any particular order, but these are the general areas alphabetically that, not in order of importance, but alphabetically, the types of school bus accidents that are experienced on a day-to-day basis. The dangers occur just like when in flying a plane. When most plane accidents occur in takeoff and landing, and it's not too different in terms of school bus operation. It's the loading and unloading where a lot of the danger is in existence in terms of the children. And this requires thorough investigation to prevent. And let's just look at some of the aspects. Some of the contributors we find is the bus, sometimes the default, when they don't activate the yellow pre-warning and give motorists enough time to react that the bus is stopping, and not training the students on safe boarding and alighting, not training employees in all aspects either, and also, and a lot of the situations that I've experienced is, I can't believe where they locate bus stops, and they need to be located in safe areas, not only on the streets where children picked up, but even in the school area as well. This is a major controversy area. In many places in the United States, students are forced to cross streets and where there are no crosswalks, where there are no sidewalks, where there are no traffic controls, in order to get on board their bus. And there are a lot of advocates out there that are advocating home-side bus stops. And what makes logical sense, right? Why should a child have to cross the street? Why not have the bus stop on the side in which a child lives? The studies have shown that the going to a home-side bus stop system, you can increase the travel time 2, 3, 4 times for a child, because when you have either side bus stops, you shorten the trip and, of course, the travel time for the students. So here is a trade-off. Is it appropriate to add time to the bus trip to make the children safer? I think so. And a lot of states are thinking so and are willing to sacrifice time for safety. Normally we don't think of the school bus site itself as a part of as a bus stop, but actually the school site is a bus stop, and it presents a lot of challenges in designing the stop in front of the school to ensure all the buses and students arrive and depart in a safe manner. Here's some of the school site hazards that have been identified by bus drivers. The students are unsupervised, student behavior is a problem, there's so much going on, creating bus driver error, there is not sufficient supervision, there may be one teacher out there, there needs to be heightened in supervision in terms of directing the buses in and also directing the students that are going to board the buses and those students that are not boarding the buses that are passing through the area. Sometimes buses get into a little difficulty and they back up, and that could be very dangerous for students. There could be difficult traffic conditions at the entrance and exit. Buses can be traveling too fast. They may be following each other too closely. And then this is where there's on-site school site bus stops. But what about when you have it in an urban area where it's on the street kind of service, and that even exacerbates these issues even to a greater extent? We could break down the causes and actions. Most of the situations are a result of an unsafe act by numerous parties or an unsafe condition. And if either one of these two exist, it's essential to have corrective actions taken to mitigate the situation, first to eliminate it, if not to eliminate it, to minimize it. Here are some of the unsafe acts that have been identified by bus drivers, and I'm not going to get into much detail on these. You can review them. They're pretty self-explanatory. The unsafe conditions, of course, deal with supervision, equipment, congestion, warning, housekeeping, lighting, etc. Of course, corrective action is important so that the hazard in the first place is not there and is eliminated, and in the first place to prevent the accident. And once a corrective action is taken, we want to track it to make sure it's working right, modify it as necessary, and if necessary, follow up on that corrective action and make it even better. We talked earlier about about accidents, accident incidents, and near misses. We can also categorize accidents in terms of its severity. With a near miss, where there is nothing it's a near miss and no injuries, or minor injury, or major injury, and also that catastrophic injury, which the first three we rarely read about. So when it's a catastrophic injury, we read about that, and then people bring back the issues of the major and minor injuries that also occurred that didn't see the light of day in the first place. Again, we want to prevent accidents by creating corrective actions, understand the relationships between information. The purpose of an investigation of an accident is so that we can prevent that accident from accompanying or occurring again. The only way to prevent accidents is understanding how accidents occur and preventing them from happening again. If we don't have lessons learned, then we're missing a huge opportunity. Shame on anyone who allows the same accident to continually repeat itself. The objective is to learn from accidents, communicate our knowledge, and make sure it never happens again. And this just summarizes what I just said. The lessons learned, develop structure for checking, make sure that reporting is done in a way that everyone is on the same page and everybody knows what's going on, and always try to improve. The most important reason to investigate accidents is to identify the causes and to eliminate them. And also, by investigating accidents, we find those holes in training and operations. And as Ms. Kane was asking the question, the duties of the personnel on the bus, maybe those duties need to be modified because of the route or circumstances that are involved. And whatever the policies of the district, it may be inappropriate for the way they've laid out the routes, that the routes should be consistent with the performance and the abilities and the training of the personnel that are serving the children. Non-collision events are sometimes overlooked, and that's where a bus suddenly stops, student falls out of a seat from a sharp turn, a wheelchair is not properly secured and turns over. These injuries need to be documented, and even injuries to drivers and the attendants need to be documented, again, so that these things don't occur a second time. An accident could happen once, but shame on everyone if that accident occurs a second time. There are a lot of misconceptions out there in terms of accidents and in terms of accident investigations. The school district or the bus company, they don't need to worry about it because the police will take care of everything. And if the police don't take care of everything, the insurance company will take care of everything. Or in the end, the bus contractor will take care of everything. It doesn't work that way. You can't delegate off accident investigation. The primary responsibility is with the school district, and that's where the information needs to be massaged and used to improve the operations. I see Mr. Rappaport asked the question.
Yes, I was just going to pose the question to you, Carl. Why don't you go ahead and answer it?
Do buses have, or will they have, black boxes? Black boxes are being installed. I'm not familiar with black boxes being installed on school buses, but they are being installed on commuter buses, city transit buses, and I guess in time this will happen as well, because this is valuable information and helps in the learning process. And it also proves very valuable in the safety and maintenance of the bus as well, because we call them event recorders, the short name is black boxes, but they're actually event recorders, and they could record speeds, all sorts of information, which could prove very useful in evaluating and analyzing and better understanding accidents. And in most cases, it's unions and others that try to keep these out of the safety environment. I'm going to pass over this. These are definitions. I mean, if we know that an event is rare or improbable, we want to deal with it in different manners. But if we know that events are certain or likely to occur, we have to deal with them. And it's important to identify events so that we can assign a priority to those kinds of events. So this just gives a frequency definition. I've seen some reports which are like on the back of an envelope kind of information. There should be forms for every type of accident, and the reporting should be thorough, and should be able to provide enough information that we can determine the causal factors and prevent them from occurring in the future. One of the things to bear in mind, and which scares drivers from being cooperative, is that you're guilty until proven innocent. It should be the other way around. We should not place blame until we understand all the facts. And one of the important series of reasons to do investigations is to determine accountability, to be able to overcome the nature of operators not to report, to identify drivers that could be at risk and how we can minimize that risk, or if we can't minimize the risk, find them a different kind of job to do, find gaps in training, find patterns, consistencies, and also an opportunity to investigators to practice their own techniques, such as photography, interviewing, measuring, and to improve those skills. Role of investigation, not only, once you get a good system in place, eliminating accidents reduces the cost of accidents, and it reduces spending. And today, the monies of school districts is very dear, and anything that can be done to minimize the cost is important. There are 3 investigation phases. One is to gain knowledge, to analyze the knowledge, and then to develop corrective action. Here's some typical questions that an investigator could ask about the accident of the driver or others who were involved in the accident. These are just sample questions. I can't overemphasize this, investigating near misses, because there are hundreds of near misses to one serious accident, and the difference between a near miss and an accident is, in most cases, and we all from our own driving experiences know, it could be a matter of inches or seconds. And it's important to get that information and to develop a rapport with drivers in a no-fault environment, that they'll be willing to share this information so that these kinds of situations are eliminated in the future. And we need to encourage near-miss reporting by drivers and others, employees, by protecting their confidentiality, employee protection, and to use reporting forms. In many states, the courts have found that this information is so important that it's not admissible in trial, because if it was made admissible, then this information would not become available and would not improve the safety of the system. So this is something to keep in mind. An accident report, this is the type of information that should be collected as a minimum. If you're in need of safety forms, the Public Transportation Safety Institute, which is located in either in Syracuse or Rochester, New York, has these forms available, some for pay and some for free, on their website. There are levels of accountability in terms of safety, and that goes from the worker at the lowest level to the supervisor, the manager of the supervisors, and corporate, which in this case is the school bus district. Who's responsible? Everybody in the system is responsible, and the first line of responsibility in terms of organizing and getting things going is the principal and the transportation supervisor, and then, of course, the school district administrators supervising the individual schools. What's the principal's job? To assign, to inform, to monitor, and plan. And it's important throughout the entire system to have adequate supervision. Without adequate supervision, there's an old expression, if you don't watch your business watches you. And this is not dissimilar in terms of the students. If you don't supervise the students will begin supervising you, and then we move into that period of chaos. The bus driver's job. These are some additional thoughts in terms what the bus driver's job is in terms of ensure that the bus is always secured, being on the bus, and et cetera, et cetera. Training schedule and documentation is important. What should be in training? There's various formats for training, whether it's classroom, practical on-the-job skills, computer-based training. Scheduling should be based on job function and available time. This in terms of the safety system, and everything should be documented. Safety training is very important at all levels, and it's got to be updated and constantly emphasized in the system. When a design problem is identified, such as loading and unloading, or bus loop problems, or the mixture between, one case I had, between private buses and, between the school buses and the parents' vehicles mixing together in the unloading area, and mixing walkers and bus riders, and you have nothing but chaos, and these things need to be designed out and solved. And these are some examples of some of the design solutions that have been applied by various school districts around the United States. If you're looking for additional resources to supplement what I'm presenting, these are additional sources of information on these subjects, and they all have websites, and the information is in general free and available. Again, I'd like to leave you with the thought, think safety, safety, safety. Like in real estate, it's location, location. In safety, there's no substitute for safety. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carl, and thank you for the time and effort that you put into this presentation. I think there were many very good takeaways that each of the attendees will take with them. Just briefly, to wrap up today's program, if you'd like to speak to Dr. Carl Berkowitz about a specific matter that you're working on right now, you can call us at 800-523-2319. As I mentioned during the introduction, tomorrow morning I'll send out a link to the archive recording of this program. In that email, I will also include a link to the PowerPoint presentation that Carl used. The archive recording of this program, as well as all of our previous programs, can be found in the TASA Knowledge Center. Visit our homepage at tasanet.com and click on the Knowledge Center. You'll be directed to the archive recordings. Our next webinar for legal professionals, Human Factors Issues in Automobile Accident Cases, will take place on Tuesday, March 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have any follow-up questions or comments, please feel free to send me an email. Like I said, you will get an email tomorrow morning from me. You can simply reply to that email. We do take all of your comments under consideration, and they help us to produce better programs. With that, I'd like to thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon, and again, Carl, for putting together a terrific presentation. And I'll now end the meeting. Thank you so much.